You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. Chris Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com, thechrisvossshow.com. Hey, we're coming here with a great podcast. Thanks for tuning in. We certainly appreciate you. The Chris Voss Show family, the family that loves you but doesn't judge you in the way that other families do. That makes us the best kind of family. So we welcome you with open arms today. As always, refer the show to your family, friends, and relatives. Go to youtube.com/Chris Voss. Tell them to go to iTunes and subscribe. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss. See everything we're reading and reviewing over there. Also go to, all of our groups on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, all those crazy places the kids play. You know the drill. The big LinkedIn newsletter. Holy crap. I just popped in there and it picked up 50 new subscribers in one day. That thing is like growing by the thousands. It's amazing. Also, our big LinkedIn group, 132,000. Go follow that over there as well to see what we're doing. That LinkedIn is like, it's really hot right now, as they tend to say in Zoolander. Anyway, guys, we have another author on the show with us today. He's the author of the newest paperback, The Last Keeper, December 8th, 2021. This just came out. J.V. Hilliard is going to be on the show with us, and this is going to be a book of a series. So there's going to be a whole mess of these coming about that he will be talking to us about. About himself, his bio, he was born of steel, fire, and black wind. J.V. Hilliard was raised as a Highlander in the foothills of once great mountain chain on the confluence of the three mighty rivers that forged his realm's wealth and power for generations. We'll have to find out where that's at. His father, a peasant twerg, toiled away in industries of honest labor and instilled in him a work ethic that would shape his destiny. I feel like I should be like reading this as like someone from WWE. His mother, a local hero, cared for his elders, and his warrior uncle, who helped raise him during his formative years. His genius brother, whose wizardly prowess allowed him to master the art of the abacus and his own quill, trained him for battles on fields of green and sheets of ice. Welcome to the show, JV. How are you?
I'm doing well, sir. How about you? Sorry about that bio.
Yeah, that's a fun bio, and it kind of matches with your brand. So where is the realm of the three mighty rivers?
Well, if anybody knows me and can figure it out by some of the hints that I dropped into the bio, I'm from Pittsburgh. So, of course, with the three rivers of Pittsburgh and the mighty confluence of the rivers, and, of course, my father was a peasant twerg, which meant he worked in a steel mill. My mother was a healer, so she was a nurse. So I decided to write my bio in a way that was just as fantastical as the epic fantasy stories that I'm writing and have written. And I look at myself as someone who lives in the realm of Warminster. And as a chronicler of the events there, I figured it would be pretty fun to throw myself into the role of one instead of just having a standard author bio and boring people to death.
There you go. So give us your .com where people can look up you on your website, find out more about you, join your mailing list, all that good stuff.
Yeah, sure. So jvhilliard.com is the website. And then the social media stuff is at JV Hilliard Books. And if you go to that on TikTok, Twitter, or Instagram, you'll find me. At Facebook, you'll find me at JV Hilliard.
There you go. So what motivates you want to write this book? And I guess tell us that it's going to be a series and how that works.
Yeah, sure. So in my genre of books, which is epic fantasy or sword and sorcery, oftentimes it's very difficult for an author to write a singular book. And in part, it's because as you go through the process of writing it, you're creating the world. And readers of that genre expect multiple books because they don't want to just be left behind with one story, right? And so if you and I were writing a spy novel, I can say that Chris got into a car and drove down the street. Here, I might have to describe what the street looks like. Is it made out of cobblestone? Is it made out of something magical? Or is it being pulled by horses, or is it being pulled by a hippogriff or whatever? And so there's a lot of world building that goes into that. And as a result, you oftentimes will see series of books in my genre. So fans of things like Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit or Game of Thrones or Dungeons and Dragons are folks that would, enjoy my novels.
There you go. What did you say? You said a word there of something that I didn't recognize. It went by me. So you're making this into a series. Is this your very first book?
It is. It's my first novel, and I didn't really have a whole heck of a lot of time to do it. Over the last 20 years, I've spent a lot of time in DC as a lobbyist. My professional career, I do mostly defense and technology work. But when COVID hit, DC shut down, and I had a lot of time to sit at my house, and my wife pointed at my den and said, "You're not doing nothing. Go in there and do something." And so I decided to write the book that's been rattling around in my head since I was a teenager. And then I shared it with an associate professor friend of mine and an editor friend of mine, and they both thought it was publishable, and they made a mutual introduction for me to the publishing company, Dragon Moon Press, who, if you can tell by the name, sounds like it's just very genre specific, which it is. And they picked up the story. But in my discussions with the publisher, she said, "Look, I'm not just going to do one. You got to do at least 3." And so we're up to 4 right now. I've got the second's in editing, and the third is about halfway done.
Oh, wow. That's awesome, man. You're prolific. The COVID was really good for authors. Even I got my first book done. I was trying to get it done for 10 years. I finally got it done in COVID. So
yeah, no, it's the silver lining of it all, right? I mean, this horrible menace that creeps across the world, and the only thing we're missing is blood, rain, and frogs. I won't curse you, I swear. But, I'm sitting in my house. I'm like,
don't give anyone ideas.
Yeah, like, what am I going to do here? And so, I had been, working on something like this for a while. It started when I was a young kid, and if you can't tell, I'm kind of nerdy, and a lot of my friends are the kind of geeks that play Dungeons and Dragons and love the Star Wars and Star Treks and Lord of the Rings. And so for us, I got some of the ideas from campaigns that we had led through tabletop role-playing games, or through us just having, just creative writing sessions. And then over the years, I just held on to the stuff. I didn't do anything with it. And all of a sudden that opportunity presented itself. And like you and others, I used that time productively to start the series.
Yeah. I mean, it was a good time. You're like, oh, I'm not doing anything else. You can't catch COVID doing this.
Yeah, all the lifting weights I do, you can tell, right? That's what I was doing in my basement.
That's what I started to do at the end.
For 2 days, right? Yeah.
It was kind of funny. I joined a gym, I think in August, and it was right before that Omicron rounded up. And I would go to the gym and I have it all to myself. And I usually go in the evenings too. But I'd just be like, I have a whole gym to myself. Everyone's scared to come here except for me. And I just have like the whole gym to myself. And I loved it until like about a month or 2 ago. I was like, why the hell are all these people at my gym? Like, where do they come from?
Get on my machine. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, I used to have this whole place to myself. And then I realized, I'm like, oh yeah, that COVID thing seems to be kind of over. So
yeah, and I had culture shock. I was in DC with a client last week, and they finally started to allow people to come and visit on the Hill. And the way that you used to do it is you would go to the front door of the building you needed to go in, and they would take you through a scanner, and then you were off on your own. And you could walk between buildings, and there was freedom. This time you had to call ahead and have someone come down and escort you from the front to get you credentialed, and then take you up to the office, and they had to bring you back down. Even if you had another meeting in the same building, you had to go back outside, call them, and then come back in. And it was, I don't know how sustainable that is, but in the end, it was, I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to protect everybody, but, it's the same kind of experience, except inverted, that you had at your gym.
Yeah, that's crazy. I saw that they opened, I think, to tours, limited tours, finally after 2 years, where the public can go in there, but it's like limited.
Yeah, DC's such a big tourist town. I mean, that kind of stuff has just got to be crippling it.
Yeah, I heard they won't let you take Speaker Pelosi's lectern anymore. Evidently, that's
I think that's off limits. I think some people learned that lesson the hard way.
Certainly did, by good measure. So let's talk about this book. What's give us a tease. I know the one challenge we have with novels is you can't tell us too much. You can't. Right. My novelists can never tell me the ending. My historian authors can, but never my novelist, because you gotta buy the book and read it. Give us some tease out on some of the things that are in the book, maybe some of the characters.
Yeah, sure. So one of the main characters is a young man named Damus. And Damus is a noble that's born with the power of prophetic visions, and so his ancient, which is my term for God, so think like Roman or Greek gods. They still visit the realm of Warminster from time to time, and they empower folks that are these prophets and seers. And in the book, they're called the Keepers. And Damis is away at the Cathedral of the Watchful Eye, which is the home of the Keepers, being trained to be a keeper. And he keeps having a recurring nightmare. And it just so happens that his sort of power of the sight comes when he sleeps, kind of like Edgar Casey did in the early 1900s. He would have these dreams, and some of them would come to pass, supposedly. Damis has that same dream, except his is a recurring nightmare, and he has it of a fallen keeper, a keeper that was once a very powerful man within his sect who did something to upset his ancient, and they took away his sight, both his physical sight and his metaphysical sight, and no one's been able to see this keeper. They thought for a while perhaps he was dead, and now Damis is seeing his return in his dreams. And so the book starts out in a pretty dark place, with Damis having some recurring nightmares. And I actually got the idea from that when I had a set of recurring nightmares when I was the same age as Damis. I was perhaps like in 11th and 12th grade in my first couple of years of college. And so I took those recurring nightmares and I twisted it up into this sort of fantasy nightmare that involves, magic and myths and things like that.
We were talking and joking before the show. I was looking at the two covers that are on your website people can go see, and the two covers for the two forthcoming book. I guess the second, third in the series, and the fourth is probably in the works. But I joked. I said, I think I'm going to have nightmares from the cover of your books. They look quite scary, and of course intriguing for people that love this genre.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a mix. I had someone write a review about it saying that it was darker than typical fantasy novels are, and it is. I have a penchant to write things that I think are dark, and I like the gothic. I've always been intrigued by vampires and stuff like that, and there's really none of that in my novels, save for the fact that I think to kind of grip an audience, and if you're a reader, or in this day and age, an audio listener to books, having someone tell you a story that scares you is something that gets you coming back. And for me, I'm a big lover of horror films and things like that. So I tried to make the bad guys, the big bad evil guys in the book, scare people as opposed to it just being a sword fight. And so I hope people enjoy that. It's a little different spin on the genre. Yeah, I also I kind of sprinkle in some sci-fi too. I'm a big sci-fi guy. Yeah, so like one of the things, and I don't know if you're a fan of my genre or not, but if you've ever watched the Game of Thrones or if you've ever watched Lord of the Rings, these societies have been around for 1,000 years, and yet they're still using swords and shields, right? And so in my realm, I've created this scholar city that kind of advances science in a way that's safe for fantasy adventure people. So it's not, there's no starships or ray guns, but instead there are kind of like Q from James Bond, where you get an invention that helps the good guys at the exact right moment they needed that. And so some of those inventions come out of this scholar city of Abacus. So I try to sprinkle in some of that sci-fi for my sci-fi readers as well.
Now, is it largely about, it mentions here an elven princess. Is everyone elves in the book, or is that just some of the characters?
It's just some of the characters, and I would say that if you were to pick up the book and start reading it today, through chapter 1, you're going to see the human element. Through chapter 2, you're going to see the elven element. But in the books, I've tried to take inspiration from previous fantasy authors, and elves are kind of a race that's ubiquitous, but I put a spin on my own, right? So I have Vermilion Elves, these elves that are tall and with alabaster skin and red eyes and red hair, thus the Vermilion name, or Raven Elves that are given their name because they have black eyes and black hair. And so they have this ravenish look to them. And then you read My Father Was a Peasant Twerg and stumbled over that name. That's my spin on some of the dwarves or some of the gnomes that you'll find running around in a Dungeons and Dragons module or a movie that you see where Gimli is there. It's a way of making something my own, but also paying homage to previous fantasy novels and or movies.
Yeah, I grew up, one of my favorite earliest books was J.R.R. Tolkien, and I'm trying to think of who else, The Sword of Shannara. Who wrote The Sword of Shannara?
Terry Brooks.
Terry Brooks. And we talked to Terry about getting him on for his latest book, and I guess we missed I got into him too late. I missed his book tour, but he's hopefully going to be showing up for the next one. But yeah, he wrote a ton of Sword of Shannara series books that I read, and so I was really into that genre. I mean, I think I still have my original Tolkien books. They're horribly beat up. They're paperback. I think I have a beautiful gold version of it that's in a box of The Hobbit. But yeah, I still hold on to those to this day. It's a treasure from my childhood. But I love that genre.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I got, when I was in fourth grade, I got introduced to the genre by an English teacher of mine. My English teacher went on a medical sabbatical, and for the last month of the year, we had a substitute, and our curriculum became reading The Hobbit. So he literally read it out loud to us, and I loved it. It was fantastic. And from that day, I was a fan of the genre. And Terry Brooks was writing the Sword of Shannara series, like Sword, Elstone, Wish Song, back when I was in high school. So again, that was a follow-on, because Tolkien was gone at that time. And so once you got through his stuff, you had to find others like that. And Terry was one of my inspirations. He and a number of the authors that have adapted many of the Dungeons and Dragons modules, like Dragonlance or Ravenloft, or something like the Dark Elf trilogy by R.A. Salvatore. Those are folks that, I've tried to kind of follow in their footsteps, doing the same.
Yeah. And then Sci-Fi, I was really into Alan Dean Foster books. I would buy them all, just buy them all and consume them. I loved, I guess you call them science fiction, but the character building, it was pretty amazing. So, you've gone from lobbyist to author, and you've been prolific. You've gotten 3 books in the can, I guess, right?
Yeah, we've got one out that came in, The Last Keeper. The second one is due out late summer, and the third will be due out right before the holidays of this year. And I hope to be able to complete the series by the end of Q1 of 2023. And then we'll see where that takes us. I mean, right now, there's plenty to do in terms of building my audience and loyal readers. And I try to, do shows like this to help to promote it. But also, I've got some ideas for other books and series within the same realm, or I can write stuff outside of Warminster. And for right now, I think that, my focus is knocking out these 4 books and doing the best job that I can in doing it.
Yeah, that's awesome. We've got people on the show that come back about every 6 to 9 months. So they're just amazing how they punch out books. And they're on like version 25, version 30 of different novels that they write for, action or Ryan. They're kind of like the Ryan. Well, they're not all like the Ryan, whatchamacallit.
Like Tom Clancy or Jack Reacher.
The Jack Reacher sort of things. But, some of them are like Sherlock Holmes type characters. They solve mysteries and stuff. Yeah, it's just amazing. Like they just keep pumping out books, and there's like 20 or 30 versions of that character. And then sometimes they have like multiple book series that split off, and they've got, 30 of Jane Doe and 30 of Bob Smith, and, it's just amazing, and it's great that there's an awesome market out there where people love these books, that consume them, and that's why we love the show. I mean, books are awesome.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, the marketplace for books has changed so dramatically in the last 10 years. You've had a number of folks begin to, and there's my husky in the background trying to look out the window,
husky,
looking for his mother. But the marketplace has changed. You have a lot of folks that are doing independent publishing or using publishing service companies to help them, edit and get published. In other cases, you have something called rapid release, which are folks that are writing smaller books like novellas, or 100 or 200 page novels, and that begets loyalty. People are they're looking for the next and the next and the next. So it doesn't surprise me that you've had a number of successful authors on who are on their 25th or 30th book, because you've got those sales, right? You've got people that are loyal to you. They want to read about those characters and or they want to read about the spin-offs of those characters too. My first book was out, and within the first week, I had someone tell me that 2 of the minor characters in the book were their favorites. And one wrote and said that they wanted to see, I have this like barbarian hobbit looking guy. He's not a hobbit, it's called a springheel. But imagine sort of like this barbarian berserker hobbit named Blue Connie, and he's a drinker and he rides a war dog, and everyone said, I want you to write the adventures of Blue Connie next. And then I had someone else tell me that the villain, the absolute villain in the book, this guy named Incanus Druwaith, was their favorite character and reminded them of Boba Fett. And in both cases, I'm thinking to myself, what about the main characters? Where are you going? Meanwhile, I'm like, I know where I'm going next. So it's strange how that happens sometimes. But you build, I think, not only loyalty with readers, but then there's a demand for that, and it's hard to walk away from it when you know that you can sell something and people want it. And I think guys like Terry Brooks, he turned his into a TV show, and there are others out there like The Witcher has become a Netflix show. So there are other options to come with that too, in terms of being an entrepreneur in a very specific marketplace that's changed very dramatically in the last decade.
Yeah, if you can get those, what are the Hollywood options and stuff like that, that's a really good game. We had J.A. Jance on the show a couple times. She's prolific. I think she's written like 66 books or something now. And we've had her on twice, and she talks about sometimes, her audience comes up to her at books things. You really need to, like, I think one of the things is she's like, do you realize one of your characters is an alcoholic? And it never occurred to her. and might have an alcohol problem. And she's like, wow, okay. So yeah, it's interesting. You get that feedback like you're talking about from the audience, and you're just like, well, maybe we should, kind of helps. It's kind of like nice to help, help maybe map out the future of the books and stuff.
Yeah, not only that, I mean, the question I get asked a lot is, if your books were to ever be turned into movies, what actor or actress would, and that's a fun one, right? That's a fun one to play, because let's tell you who you think it is, and then you tell them who you think it is, and who knows, right? It was a fun question to answer.
Do you have any in mind that were thinking about when you were?
Some of them are my ideas. Others are from people that have told me, and so I have to discount some of this because my wife has her favorite actors, and it's not because they would be good in their roles, because she wants to see them, right? So I give her a little bit of a wide berth on that. And I figure, okay, I know she's just casting for her own preference of man, but in my case, there's a couple of, like, I think Clancy Brown, I don't know if you're a fan of the Highlander movie back in the 80s, or he played the main prison guard in Shawshank Redemption. Clancy Brown would be an excellent villain for me. Yeah, there's a character named Dragich von Lormark, and Dragich is sort of the guy in the book that no one likes, and he's in. And like I said, I'm not going to give away too many spoilers, but he's someone that ends up on the wrong side of your naughty and nice list if you're Santa. And I think he would make an excellent von Lormark, without a doubt. I also think that, Gemma Anderson would make a great Fox Dalton. I've got this sort of like red-haired, young rogue who's kind of like the Han Solo of the group. And, I've seen her now in a number of things, including a vampire movie called Byzantine. And I thought she did a great job. And she looks exactly like how I wrote the character. And so you get a couple of those that kind of pop into your head from now and again. And then, you get random people telling you that, oh, yeah, get Peter Dinklage to play Blue Connie. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think anything I'm doing is going to be able to afford Peter Dinklage. But thank you very much for giving me the suggestion. Yeah.
That gentleman, I just Googled him. He's got flowing white hair, almost Gandalfish like now, at least in some of the photos I saw. I don't know how recent that is, but he definitely could play someone like an elder sort of whatever dude. He has that kind of regal sort of look for a character. So and he matches the character. So, I mean, he's monstrous, and in the Highlander movie, he carried a two-handed sword in his character, and I'm already casting him, as you can tell, as long as like he's already playing it. But the character he would play would be a guy that wields two swords at the same time, sort of this Florentine style fighting. And I think he would be perfect for it. He's, like you said, he's a little older than he was when he was playing these action roles in the 80s, but I think from the way that I've written the character, he could be both, and he just comes across as somebody that could fit the Dragich von Lormark role to a T. There you go. So, who's your favorite character in the book?
So that's a little bit of a cheat. So I wrote that my favorite character is a character named Sir Ritter of Vulcaneer. And Sir Ritter was a Dungeons and Dragons character that I played for many years. And so I adopted sort of his character arc as something that fits into the novel. And, Sir Ritter is a Trollborn, which is, someone of mixed blood. His father is human and his mother is Raven Elf. And so those of Trollborn blood are often looked down upon in their societies. And so Ritter suffers from that complex. He's someone who's been given a very difficult job in guarding the borderlands for the king, and they don't appreciate him for it. And then, of course, his love interest is that elven princess that you mentioned before, and it's sort of a forbidden love, right? Where He's not allowed to be in love with her, but can't help himself. She starts to fall for him, but it's kind of verboten. And I think that's what I try to do that in all of my novels. I think that there's a number of themes like forbidden love, or just a general struggle, or things like duty. Like Sir Ritter, his job is to do things he doesn't want to do, and he does them just like any other soldier would, without complaint. And so I think those kind of themes that you find oftentimes, I think people that are reading it can identify with, and as they identify with it, they want to read more. They want to be like Sir Ritter. They want to find out what happens to him. Does he change that perception around? And I think that everyone likes to cheer for a guy like Sir Ritter, and and it's kind of a trope. You know what I mean? I know J.K. Rowling has the Muggles, and they're mixed blood too, or you see this in other novels. But I think in mine, there's a specific purpose for it, and so that's my favorite character. But I say that because, I had to literally play him. I don't know if you've ever done my nerdy version of Dungeons and Dragons, but if you have, you'll understand that sometimes these things take their own, a life of their own in your head, and you don't forget them. They're almost party. Yeah.
Well, the genre is huge. I mean, there's people I know that are my age that are still playing D&D. And I remember when I was growing up in high school, which is, a long time ago, considering I'm 54, and there were people that D&D, I think it was kind of the latest thing back then. I think it had been around for a while, but it was getting really hot. Of course, all the people in the religious town were screaming about hellfire and damnation and Satanism, whatever stuff. They did that about video games too. When video games first came out, and pinball, they were like, Pac-Man is of the devil, which of course everyone knows it is.
Well, clearly Pac-Man,
especially Mrs. Pac-Man.
I didn't know if you knew that. Yeah. The bow in her hair tips you off. It's like the 666.
Yeah, Donkey Kong clearly is an emissary of Lucifer. Everyone knows that. If you played the game, it's hell to play. So it's a lot of quarters. Let's put it that way. People, I know, half the Gen Zers are going, "What are quarters?"
Yeah, what are you doing with quarters? I know.
What quarters in Donkey Kong?
Yeah, well, you're right. I mean, D&D was popular for a long time, and then it had a comeback, and part of the comeback I would attribute to the new generation of gamers. I think that now people are playing Dungeons and Dragons live on TV, like Critical Role, and the folks like that. They have their own their own show, or there's folks that do LA by Night, and they play a vampire game, and those things. People will watch them, and like they do nowadays. I mean, there are kids that watch G4 they watch gamers playing games. It's an entirely different thing, and you just have to get used to it. But I think COVID helped that out a bit. When people were sitting at home, they couldn't do much. All of a sudden, they started to Skype and play D&D, and its popularity is again on the rise, and has been for the last couple of years. I think you even see celebrity guests come on those shows to play characters, and most of them are actors or actresses, and they make their way in for publicity stunts. But also, I think many of them, like Joe Manganiello, one of the another fellow Pittsburgher, like he's been playing for many years, and he's found his love for the game has returned with its research.
I think too, like me, I still love everything old. Like I was looking at a box and playing some records the other day. Like seriously, I have collector's items of Rush from my childhood and other albums. And I was going through some of my boxes. I still have 8-track tapes. There's kind of a resurgence of that, where a lot of us that are older, we're kind of evaluating our childhood. Some of my friends that are my age, I saw they were making like Dungeons and Dragon dice on their 3D printer. Like, I mean, we got money, we can pay for stuff now. And they're just like doing crazy stuff with it. Like, let's make a Dungeons and Dragons thing. And, it's kind of fun that, it takes us back to their childhood and brings us back to those wonderful memories. Anything more you want to touch on or tease on the book before we go out?
I would suggest that, we've talked about Terry Brooks. We've talked about Tolkien. We've talked about Dungeons and Dragons. And I would say that, again, if you're a fan of that genre, or if you watched Witcher on Netflix, or even if you like the sci-fi stuff like Star Trek or Star Wars or Battlestar Galactica, Firefly, any of that stuff, this book is for you. I think to that kind of audience, folks that have open minds, and folks that like to throw themselves into fantasy. In my case, it's escapism for me. I deal in a very real world every day, and for me to find an escape hatch, and writing allows me to do that. And I like to share those stories with other folks. And I think if those folks can appreciate some, I mean, there's many more. Brandon Sanderson, you start Patrick Rothfuss, you can go through the list of them. If you like that stuff, I hope you'll like mine.
There you go. There you go. Well, it's been wonderful to have you on the show. Thank you for coming on. We certainly appreciate it.
My pleasure, sir. And thanks again. I'll reach out to you again in July when the next one comes out.
Do it, please. We have so many authors that keep coming back. It's just like some of them just reschedule after the show for the next one because the scheduler goes out like 9 months or so. It's funny. Give us your .com so people can find you on the interwebs and get to know more about you.
Yeah, it's www.jvhilliard.com.
There you go. Order up the book, guys. You can find it wherever fine books are sold. And The Last Keeper, December 8th, 2021 by J.V. Hilliard. And of course, you want to subscribe to his list. I think he's got a list on his website. You can get notifications for the upcoming books that will be coming out. You probably want to get this one in the can so you can read it and to be ready for the next stuff that comes out. Thanks so much for tuning in. Go to youtube.com/Chris Voss. Refer the show to your family, friends, and relatives. Go to all of our places across the interweb, goodreads.com/Chris Voss, and all of our groups. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe, and we'll see you guys next time.